Hey, welcome to the 482nd episode of Just Shoot It, a podcast about filmmaking, screenwriting, and directing. This episode is brought to you by patrons Josh Hansborough, T. Lamb, and Mike Leonard. I'm Matt Enlow.
And I'm Oren Kaplan, and today is your lucky day. You've got Matt and Oren both here. And nobody else, but we are talking about the things that are on our minds. Matt just came back from Chattanooga Film Festival and has contemplated whether his life in LA is worth living. Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk a little bit about maybe being starstruck with some people we've met / competed against, and then maybe even a little bit of imposter syndrome, which is, I do feel like it's just a topic everyone talks about at all times.
Yeah.
But it's because it's a real thing, especially in an industry where every single job is a gig and we're always on the hunt for the next one.
Well,
is that, I guess on that, just to totally break our format immediately.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Is there do you see an end game in your life, of ever not just being hunting for the next gig?
Boy, great question. I am in a season, in an era of trying to think of building more longevity into my life and practice. I think that if we are just job to job forever, at a certain point we will be out of fashion, and at a certain point we will not be able to keep up, and we will be tired. And hopefully you've saved enough money to retire.
Right. And I guess that's my main question. How much is enough money?
Sure. I certainly do not have enough to retire and need to change my booking sheet in order to retire in a reasonable amount of time. But I think that the other thing is that I have focused on the short term for too much of the last few years, basically, those immediate jobs. And as filmmakers and as content creators, your IP is your legacy. Right. And so generating new story ideas, new properties to exploit, that is my retirement plan, more or less. Right.
Yeah. I think one of the reasons people loved Breaking Bad so much is because in the first episode, he's like, I'm going to die. I need to make $737,000 to finance my kids' college and my wife's retirement.
Do I do that? Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And then, according to Google, he amassed close to $80 million. Because once you hit that 737, you're like, oh, wait.
You're like, well, what if I bought my kid a sports car?
Yeah.
Or,
get that roof.
Get the pizza off the roof. That's right. Upgrade from the Aztec.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a very cool car.
Yeah.
For all our young listeners, Breaking Bad was a show about meth.
Before there was Better Call Saul.
Yeah. Well, let's underail us and get back to the topic.
Get back on the rails to Chattanooga, the Chattanooga Choo-Choo.
It's like a train town, right? Doesn't it?
It was once upon a time. It was kind of the town that sort of connected the North and South. Basically, there was a major...
Of America.
Yeah. There was a major train station that was the Andrews Sisters and Glenn Miller sang songs about the Chattanooga Choo-Choo was a thing, for sure. And we actually stayed at... Now that train station has turned into a hotel and kind of a warehouse space with restaurants and bars and that sort of stuff. And our last night, we stayed at the Choo-Choo with my daughter.
Cool. And a train just drives through at 4 a.m.
No, you sleep on a train.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it was cool. She was so every time we're hey, what'd you think of going to Chattanooga? She's like, I stayed in the Choo-Choo Hotel.
That's hilarious. That's when we took our kids to Italy, or my daughter in Italy, and we're like, what was your favorite part of our trip? Mm-hmm. She's like, the airplane, the flight.
Also
literally my least favorite part.
So cool, but it is incredible to fly in an airplane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unlimited movies. That's what kids think about. Unlimited
speed. You're like, oh man, my kid watched 4 hours straight of Winnie the Pooh. Just mainlining Winnie the Pooh.
But also at the same time, don't you feel bad for the people that are bringing Play-Doh and
chumps, the chumps
drawing?
Yeah.
They're we'll entertain our kid. I mean, do you want to entertain your kid for 4 hours? Or
you cannot entertain your kid for 4 hours.
Yeah,
with
sitting
Play-Doh
in the same spot.
Tackle boxes or whatever. Yeah. We don't do screens outside of the airplane, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, you have a little airplane in your house whenever your daughter wants to watch a movie.
Exactly.
Air Hollywood.
Yeah.
So why'd you go to Chattanooga?
Basically, Chattanooga is a festival that we'd been to before and really loved. The town is really charming. The festival is really well run and well curated. And the filmmakers who make the trek out there are all always awesome. So my daughter is 3.5 now, and my wife had a short that was accepted into that festival. And it was like, okay, this is an opportunity for us to road test what going to a festival with a kid is like. It's a safe space. It's familiar territory. It's not, they have stuff every night, but it's not crazy. And also it's not, no disrespect to Chattanooga, it's not a marketplace. Right. So so the stakes aren't as high as like, oh, we're trying to sell our movie. Like if you're at Sundance and you're praying for that bidding war or whatever, knock on wood, fingers crossed that happens. But like, if that were the circumstance, I wouldn't be like, sorry, it's bedtime, I gotta go. You know what I mean? Like I could
Don't bring your kids to Sundance.
Don't bring your kids to Sundance.
Grown children.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And then they're like bored or skiing, basically.
Yeah, or you can't get them into like CAA's party.
Right. So yeah, we kind of were like, okay, let's see what this is like. Like, can we take her to a party? Is that worth it or not? Also, this wasn't part of the calculus, but there's a 3-hour time difference in our favor. So we could wake up late. She'd be used to waking up late and staying up late. So we just didn't adjust from California time.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful. It was something where I had consciously made the decision to do the majority of the parenting. That like, if we had to choose between a screening or watching our kid, for the most part, I would be the person watching our kid.
Right. And just for some context, Chrissy wrote and directed a short film.
And I produced it. Yeah.
And you produced it. And she did not act in it.
Correct. Yes, that's correct. Yeah. Which she missed, actually. She acts in most of the things that she shoots. And so there is like an extra bonus of people recognizing you from the short, right? Now you have to like, someone has to see the short and then have stuck around for the Q&A and connected the dots of like, oh, that filmmaker made that short, right? And sometimes that's easier said than done. A good number of the shorts filmmakers in our block had a Q&A, were there for the Q&A. So it's a little harder to be like, oh, okay, this person made that short and that person made this short, and retain all of that stuff. And you're kind of on your phone or whatever as well.
Act in your own shorts, folks. So people recognize you.
Make the recognition easier and therefore conversations flow a little bit faster. Anyway, it was great. I feel like we learned a lot of stuff about how we like to do things. And Chattanooga was a really charming town. It was a very kid-friendly town. And I recalled when you went to Austin a few months ago, just being like, oh man, should we move to Chattanooga? The pace is great, but there's, obviously we're in the middle of the art scene, right? We're at the film festival. We're meeting all of these great, cool people. The town has a lot to offer, but it's a little out of the way. And so a little bit less, your dollar goes a little bit further. And I think, we all have been thinking about the question between strikes and fires and looming recession and all that stuff. Do I need to live in such an expensive city? Do I have to live in Los Angeles or not? And so, of course, after a charming weekend filled with, complimentary beers and pizza and, artisanal ice cream every night, I'm like, oh, maybe we should move to Chattanooga. And not with any seriousness, but like you do get a little jealous of that lifestyle. Right.
Yeah.
A slower pace, basically.
Yeah. Kind of kids riding their bikes on the streets, feeling safe, affording like free parking.
We paid a lot on we spent a lot on parking.
Just for tourists only.
Yeah. It was just like,
parking is free. Why do you keep putting,
why
dropping dollar bills in front of your car?
Yeah.
The guy's not a valet. He's literally just hanging out on the sidewalk.
And then this morning, I had coffee with our good friend, Carlin Hudson.
I mean, I'd say more of an acquaintance.
Yeah, I met her once or twice. We were catching up and it was really nice. And as I was walking back to my car, I was thinking about, because we both talked, she's from Texas. We were both talking like, oh, do you, want to stay in LA? And she was like, yes, I love LA. But I was reminded that that invigoration I felt from that conversation is part of the upside of living in Los Angeles, because there are filmmakers with whom you can relate to and commune and be around. And then the halo effect of being reminded in subliminal ways and overt ways that what we are aiming to do, what our goals are possible because our peers are doing them and achieving those goals in real time is invaluable, right? It's one thing to have great ambitions and to be in a community where you literally don't know anyone doing the next step or finding that win, or you know what I mean? Like that literally knowing that seeing that it's possible, and that a person who has great aptitude, but is not that different from you, rewires your brain to know that it is possible to do the things that we are trying to do.
Yeah. I think to me, like when it comes to where you live, and this is just off the cuff, not written in an outline or anything, there's kind of three main elements to it.
All right. Breaking it out.
Listicle.
Yeah.
For us specifically, for what we do, there's kind of the lifestyle that you can live. There's kind of the network that you can build, which I do think is more important for the creative arts, where you need to constantly be like inspired. And there's the production, like where you actually need to do the work. And I think to me, the biggest change over the last 5 years, I mean, since our episode 1 of our podcast was like, you don't need to go to film school, but you do need to go to LA. The biggest change is that number 3, the production. Like, I think LA as a production hub in general is maybe waning. I mean, obviously we are very hopeful it comes back. Anytime we get to shoot in LA, it's great. You and I have both shot in LA very recently.
Yeah. The last few jobs I've had I take that back. I was out of town a little bit this year, but like I'm shooting more in Los Angeles now than I did 2 or 3 years ago, for sure. Yeah.
But we shoot here infrequently enough that if someone was like, hey, you're going to live in Chattanooga and just do a job in LA every month or so, it would not be a big deal, right? And then you could do a job in LA or Austin or New York or wherever. It doesn't matter.
I didn't shortlist on something where the company was based in Canada and one of the filmmakers I noticed lives in Denver.
Yeah.
And who's working
on it.
Who bid on it. Yeah. The people who ended up in the short list. And I was like, oh, that's interesting,
Yeah. So from a production standpoint, I think that geography has become much less important, especially for people kind of mid-career people like us.
Yeah.
I think if you're trying to get a bunch of people together to make your short film for no money or proof of concept or spec pilot or indie film, it does help to have a big community of people for production.
Skilled people, basically.
Yeah, but then you'll still probably take them somewhere else, or you can probably find a good enough group of skilled people in Detroit or in, wherever you're going to be, Chattanooga, Nashville. But the other two things, lifestyle, it's really expensive to live in LA and many cities, New York, a lot. I mean, even Austin's not that cheap.
Yeah, Austin's as expensive. You get basically one more bedroom. Basically is which is not nothing. That's a big deal, but like you're still spending $1 million on a house.
Yeah. But so the lifestyle is, I like my life. I like driving places. I like listening to podcasts and having some alone time, when I'm in my car, which is like a very LA thing. I like the amazing food and restaurants we have in LA and kind of access to everything from retail to malls to people to celebrities, all that stuff. I like LA outside of the business. Is it as comfortable or as safe or as affordable as would I have a nicer life in Chattanooga? Probably.
Yeah. I mean, I think you bring up when I think of living in LA and the downsides, it's almost always financial. Do you know what I mean? It's just like everything about your access is incredible. It's just that my cost of living is so much higher that if I was making the same paycheck, but living in a place where that dollar stretches further, I'm less stressed about where that next paycheck is coming from because I know that I get more money, more mileage out of that paycheck in the first place, right? So you maybe don't have to hustle quite so hard. However, I think this is what you were getting to. As parents now, there is an additional check mark of, does it feel safe? Does it feel
clean,
walkable, clean?
Can I trust my kids to be alone, walking around town?
Sure. Yeah. Is there a playground? Like, I think you and I both grow up in a situation where we could go to a park with our friends around your daughter's age.
Yeah. 9.
Your parents weren't so stressed about it. And, I don't think you do. Certainly the amount of supervision that your daughter requires because of Los Angeles is greater than what we grew up with, basically.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, there is traffic. There are some natural disasters every once in a while. There is some questionable city politics and building codes and all these other things that are, I mean, I guess they're also financial in some regards. But that third thing on my list of kind of this creative, supportive community, which I think is kind of what made me think of the list in the first place, and Your Coffee with Carlin, I think it's really hard if you live in kind of a non-film city to just constantly be reminded of why you love what you do and what the priorities are. And every weekend when all your buddies are going fishing or all your friends are doing this thing or doing that thing or this barbecue or everyone's like, we're doing this camping trip. All amazing, wonderful things that I would love to do. But I don't know that they would be like, oh, they would understand like, oh, sorry, our family can't go because I have to sit down and write the screenplay, or I have a pitch or I have a treatment or I have a whatever.
Or even, I remember being at a bachelor party and waking up early to finish a script because I knew I had to shoot something the next day.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And like none of my friends had any problem. They were like, oh yeah, that's what he's doing. But
because they were other film people.
Because they were other film people. It was a film school bachelor party. But like if it was a high school bachelor party, they'd all understand, but they would be like, boy, we'll make a lot more money than Enlo.
Right.
And he's waking up at 6 a.m. hungover just to write a web series.
Yeah. Yeah. But he got, but he gets to do fun things.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just this past week, I was reminded of it again because I just kept talking about all these people. I was just on set for like 4 days straight, strangers. So we chit chat a lot, especially about like the business and about filmmaking and about that stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, I know this guy because he's like, his kids went to preschool with my daughter. And I know this guy because his daughter goes to elementary school with my daughter. And this person happens to be my neighbor. And this is this. And I actually met this person at Starbucks. And, like just talking to people about my network, so much of it is unrelated to I worked with them and that's why I know them. It's because I knew them socially.
Community, basically, is what you're saying. Yeah.
And that's something that is just really, I still think it's a much more depressed community and struggling community, but it still is probably more of a community than you can get in any other city that I know of, Yeah. I mean, unless you're like working in the office at a production company in Chicago and you're the biggest company there and you're working nonstop or something, But just your lifestyle community,
Over the years, I think that you and I have focused, certainly you, but me too, like all of my money comes from commercials now, whereas it used to be split between narrative and commercials more. And I'm really trying to actively reintegrate myself into scripted in a more meaningful way. But I think that the community still kind of helps us. It's a lot easier to stay connected to that world because of it, right? Whereas I think if you lived in New York or Chicago, if you're a theater actor in Chicago, great. You're living and breathing theater, no problem. If you're an advertiser in Chicago, great. You're living and breathing advertising. But I don't know. Actors can kind of like do both more or less. Less so now, I guess, but still. Whereas I think LA, we can kind of be commercial directors and also still, at a barbecue, see a friend who is on whatever, the new
TV show,
the new season of the show. And that just kind of keeps us, again, back to my initial point of like being reminded, like, it's all possible and we're seeing it and touching it and benefiting from it. Do you know what I mean? In real time and being reminded of it all the time, which is, I think, maybe something that this podcast offers people. That's kind of the point. That's kind of the thesis is like, you can do it too, and sometimes we're doing great and sometimes we're doing less great, and that's part of the journey and the reality of it. Right. And I think other podcasts focus on when people are doing their very best,
Yeah, we like to talk about people at their worst.
Or is it people at their middle, I think is really helpful, Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. The one other kind of nice thing is I feel like the combination kind of social media and Instagram, I see a lot of work I really love on Instagram, and I'm very free to like reach out to whoever posted it and be like, who shot this? Who designed this? Who's this? Yeah. Where'd you get this actor? What's this location? And there's a really high chance that whoever worked on it either lives in LA or works as a local in LA. And so there's that other thing of kind of access to like kind of some of the world's greatest artists and collaborators that are here. But yeah, all that said, that's cool about Chattanooga. Did you sell the short?
Well, it's funny. Gigi Hawkins, previous guest of the show, had her feature there. We're going to be on No Film School podcast relatively soon. She was like, oh, hey, what are your goals? And, just kind of in chit chat. And I was kind of like, oh, my goal is to figure out how to do this. It wasn't to like try and sell. Like, I think there are market opportunities and, it's cool to meet other filmmakers. And, it also forced us to reflect on like, we've had lots of like, fun, casual friendships form from film festivals, especially if you're on the tour, if you're like traveling with a film that's doing a bunch of different festivals and your film is compatible with someone else's in some way. Maybe it's the same genre or like, similar themes or something, you kind of just end up connecting. But my wife in particular, who was really good at nurturing relationships, has had some real creative partnerships result from meeting someone at a party.
Yeah.
You know,
My wife's a big partier.
she's a huge partier, just
Huge.
out of
Wasn't that
control.
loosely based on her?
Yeah, for
I
sure.
haven't seen it, but the trailer.
The first 10 minutes of that movie are
I
quite
want
graphic.
to watch it, but I'm always like on an airplane. I'm like, I'll probably be embarrassed to watch this on
There's
an airplane.
more urine in the beginning than you're expecting.
Okay.
But yeah, the goal was just like, you know, have a nice time. And like, this is just training reels for like, you know, additional, because it was hard to get to, you know, like we landed in Atlanta, we drove 2 hours, like, you know, but just like, let's do the festival thing again and see and learn what we learn, basically. See what we see.
Right.
Yeah. And we did.
Well,
It was
cool.
great. Yeah. Now I'm ready to move.
Yeah.
So, Oren, while I was gallivanting in the Appalachians, you
Mhm.
were gallivanting in the sound stages of Hollywood.
Yeah.
What have you been working on lately?
Well, I was in Thailand last week, and I just want
That's
to
true.
double, triple down on this freaking app that Carlin told us about, Time Shifter.
Yeah.
It is a 14-hour time difference. I flew there. It was like I flew, I left like on a Thursday. I arrived there on a Sunday because it was international dateline, 14-hour time difference. And I worked the next day, and this app basically shifted me perfectly. I didn't miss
Awesome.
a single day. I got
Awesome.
there, fitting meetings, pre-production meeting, next day pre-light, next day shooting, next morning I was back on a plane, back to LA. And I did not skip a beat. I landed in LA. I took my kids my daughter was in a play. I saw 2 performances of her play over the weekend. And then on Monday, I was at the pre-light and pre-production meeting of my shoot. And I took 0 naps. I might have like closed my eyes for like 15 minutes and like, but I pretty much functioned
That is incredible.
with this. Yeah. Like in both countries. And it's kind of like I know there's a lot of high level people, and I mean high level, or say high level, I mean just like incredibly
Rich is what you
wealthy,
Rich and busy.
business people.
Yeah.
Like when I did that whole project for Pinterest, and I worked with all these Pinterest executives that are flying all over the world all the time, and they're all like just on Ambien half the time. And by the way, I did not use Ambien. The only 2 drugs I used,
melatonin.
I did take some melatonin to help fall asleep.
Which is barely a drug. Like, I don't think that's
It's like
accurate
your
to call that a drug.
body's making it too,
Yeah.
but kind of helps,
Yeah.
I think. And it might even help keep you asleep, which is part of the difficulty. And I did do caffeine, of course. The app does tell you when to do the melatonin, when to take the caffeine, and most importantly, when to avoid the caffeine. The hardest part was on my flight to Tokyo from LA. I had to basically go to sleep right when they were serving dinner. And it was just so noisy, like, all the cutlery and people and trays opening and closing.
Noise cancellation only does so much. Yeah.
Yeah. But so I used actually like earplugs and an eye mask, and I just slept. And I was like, is it okay if I eat later? And they're like, yeah, we'll save you some. So I ate when everyone else was sleeping. And I kind of had to do that again on the way back, like kind of sleep while everyone was eating and eat while everyone was awake. So that was like the hardest part of it, but
Not too bad though.
yeah. Other than that,
You're flying business class, first class?
Yeah,
It's
it's
for
kind of like
work.
a combination.
Yeah.
of,
So you've got like a little bed is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I had like those lay flat seats or whatever. So it definitely helps. But anyhow, so yeah, Time Shifter, highly recommend it. It totally works. I did have to, you get it one time free, and I had to actually pay for it.
Sounds worth
You
it.
pay per trip.
I felt a little jet laggy just dealing with
The 3 hours.
the 3 hours. Yeah.
I always do too.
I'm going to blame my kid because we would stay up a little bit later than her. She was staying up later than normal. We just need like a little bit of wind down time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like I wasn't in complete control of my schedule the way I think you had to take control of your schedule in order to to do this. But that's incredible.
Yeah.
That, like,
and I
you're-
still went to like client dinners and stretch the time here and there.
Sure, of course. Yeah.
I tried to like avoid alcohol, but it's kind of, you can only do that so much when you're like, meeting with agencies. And
I think when I was in Ohio last summer, I didn't sleep a wink. And I think I alluded to it before. And I think some of that was because of alcohol. Do you know what I mean? Like, just like, again, the schmoozing of it all. And I think you get tricked into thinking, well, help me fall asleep quickly. And then you just wake up in a terrible mood. We're getting older too.
Yeah.
Just need to like chug a bunch of water.
Yeah, this is all for old people. Young people can just,
just elastic. They just bounce back, no problem.
Yeah, fall asleep whenever, wake up whenever.
But I think I think our age forces us to be more mindful of the discipline that it takes to be at our best. However, I think that you still don't want to take opportunities for granted. And so doing what it takes to be at your best requires discipline for sure. And so I think, young people probably need less to do well, but they still need to do well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
I think they're just more flexible. I mean, even my kids my daughter could literally sleep on a piece of wood for 8 hours. And she would not wake up and be like,
I can't walk for 2 weeks.
But anyhow, so then when I came back, I got this very last minute thing. It was actually an opportunity I found out about in Korea, on my flight back. Hey, you have this opportunity to pitch for this job. Shoots very soon, July 9th. And I was like,
super
cool.
soon. That's crazy.
I read there's this whole 4th of July thing in the way.
Sure.
But I read the creative. I was like, oh, this is a famous campaign that's been done for many years. And it would be very
akin
cool
to a Jack in the Box sort of.
Yeah.
It
was
a legacy.
A food comedy sports thing.
But I mean Jack with Jack in the Box. Something of that level of oh, you did a spot, a Sonic spot with the guy.
Yeah.
Like that.
Probably more akin to Sonic than Jack. But it's kind of, my Beggin, I did the Beggin Strips campaign. It came out where it's the dog, they call it nose cam. It's the camera is seeing the nose in the foreground and is running around and the dog's bacon, 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 bacon. So kind of in the same vein as that, as they started this in the 80s and now then they did it again in the 90s and then you get to be a part of that.
Mikey likes it. Yeah.
Or even Old Spice, there's all these kind of things. So this would have been one of those. And I was like, oh, cool. And, the budget was good. A 1-day shoot with a celebrity person that you have for 7 hours. And then just offhandedly, I was like, oh, who else? Is this a single bid, triple bid? Who else is? And my managing director at art class was like, oh yeah, the other people in the bid are, I don't think there's any reason to not say their names. Neil Brennan, who is if you don't know who he is, he created Chappelle Show with Chappelle. He's a famous comedian.
Stand-up, yep. Many stand-up specials and also a prolific director.
So Neil ended up getting the job and totally deservedly. I literally, while I was making the treatment, I'd pulled all these images.
And then you realized
I realized they were from work of Neil's and I had to use other images. The other director, I literally just met him. He's repped by a huge, amazing company. I just met him at the DGA very quickly because everyone was trying to meet him.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Because he just won, his commercial was nominated. His Super Bowl commercial was nominated for an award last year. So huge, kind of idol type of director. I think I don't know if you and I have probably, there was a time when at least 50% of the projects we were talking about, we would reference this person in their work.
Yeah. Maybe
it's not Wes Anderson.
Top 10 favorite commercial directors.
Yeah. And they're famous for non-commercial stuff.
Yeah.
Probably that's more famous for that. But anyhow, so when I was why am I bidding on this? I have no chance of winning this job.
What is happening here? Yeah.
Why would you pick me? And I was like, I mean, one director definitely has a style, and maybe you could believe that they don't want that style. The other director,
that director, it's not even that they're associated with the style. Let's pretend it's Wes Anderson, right? Yeah. If you said, "Hey, I'm hiring Wes Anderson for a commercial,"
right?
You kind of expect it to look like a Wes Anderson movie. That's kind of what you're buying into. So it's a similar sort of thing where their aesthetic is so heavy-handed. Now, can this director or Wes Anderson do other styles? Absolutely. But you kind of hire them. Wes is maybe not an apt comparison because this other director gets hired for stuff that's not associated with his style a lot,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so it was, So
that would be the reason not to
So
hire
that's the reason
them,
maybe not to. Yeah. But Neil's stuff is very in line with the creative for this and that kind of topic and that stuff. And I was like, maybe Neil will be too expensive or something. That was my hope.
Yeah, you kind of hope, look, we are not name brands the way these other directors are. Do you know what I mean? And so the way you win is by putting your back into it, really sweating through it, showing them how bad you want it, because you're hoping that these other people are so busy with other work that they don't have the time to put that TLC in the way that we will fight for it more,
Yeah. So I think for me, and I had the same situation last year, I actually bid against Neil something else. And director Martin Granger, who ended up getting it, who's also like a legendary director that directed like the progressive, don't become your Dr. Rick, don't become your parents campaigns and all these other things. And I did accidentally include some images from his work in my treatment on that. But my strategy when I'm bidding against these kind of powerhouse directors is to just put a lot of work in to think of every single possible thing. This is what this person in the background is going to be wearing. And this is like what we're going to do this. And this is why this is going to be funny. And here's like 10 more ideas for jokes on this. And here's how I'm going to prep that. And here's this person that I already talked to a production designer about.
We've already got this person lined up. And yeah.
Because I'm like, I think sometimes I'm not going to win on name brand, but maybe I'll win on availability. Like I will talk to you. I'll make you feel good. I'll give you all the materials you need to show your client. I'll handhold you through the whole time when someone like, I don't know, like a Denis Villeneuve who's prepping Dune at the same time might not have time to do, with you.
Yeah. Sam Mendes is between projects, right?
Yeah. So,
but sometimes you still want to hire Sam Mendes.
Yeah. So I found out yesterday I didn't get it, and I was on set, which is always like a little weird to be working on something else when you find out you didn't get something else. But it's really nice when you find out you did get something because you're like, ooh, you're like feel like you're windsurfing, you're catching the next gust.
I was like hoping to hear on something while I was on set, and it was with the same company, and was like, are they smart enough to know not
to tell you,
not to tell me if it's bad news? And I don't think they were thinking that hard about it. I think they just got the news later than they thought. Basically.
Yeah. No, I know. It's really hard to not read into like the way people are talking to you and stuff. But I do wonder, like when you're competing for a job with someone, do you ever in your pitch try to explain why someone else's style without naming them by name wouldn't make sense for this work?
Yeah. So just using the Wes Anderson example, like you wouldn't say geometric and symmetrical composition won't work for this, but you would say something like, I think it's really important that this feels alive and handheld and active and organic. Like if things feel too
staged or performative,
I think that kind of loses what's really special about this thing that you wrote. Right. Like, that's the way to like kind of backhanded say, don't pick Wes Anderson, pick me. Right.
Right. I did think about that. The other director in the bit, it's easy to do that.
Sure.
To them.
Sure.
It's harder to do it to the director that ended up winning, who's got a little more chameleon-y, but also just right up the sweet spot. Creative. Yeah, totally.
Well, so this, you and I, we go back and forth on whether we both always do our hard to like put everything into every single pitch. I tend to not know who I'm bidding against, and you like to know who you're bidding against. For that, I don't want to be contaminated by it. You want to understand the whole picture so that you can kind of play to your strengths relative to what you perceive their strengths to be. And I think that there's wisdom to that for sure. I understand why you do that, but also you don't know A, what their take is, and B, what client is looking for from them or you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But the more jobs I get, the more I find out the feedback. Like this job I just did, I finished yesterday. It was a quadruple bid, which by the way, they told me a funny story about this.
Dude, as the quad bids, what's going on?
I don't know. It's a quadruple bid, but they said that the reason I got it was just that as I was going through my treatment, that they basically had this checklist of questions and things they wanted to.
And you answered all the questions.
Yeah. And they're like, you just like, yep, we're with you on camera movement. We're with you on how to shoot it. We're with you on the tone. We're with you on this. We're with you on. So I just kind of like hit the things that they wanted. And they're like the other directors, they had some really cool ideas, but they were a little like off the reservation. And they did say that one director, and
it's on this job or a different job?
This job that I just finished yesterday.
Oh, okay.
They told me, I don't know who the director is, but they told me that one director, when they found out that I was bidding, was like, oh, I have no chance in getting this because I am listen to Oren's podcast.
Oh, great.
So much of what I know about pitching is from the podcast.
Yeah.
And it's like, who was it? And then they didn't
say. Yeah.
But I think.
You have a guess?
My guess is it's probably Michael Ryan Fagan.
That's my guess too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But who knows? Anyhow, I guess it's nice to be kind of on both sides of that.
My guess is Vince Pioni.
Yeah, I got it. But it is nice to be kind of on both sides of that. And also, like, usually when I lose a pitch, and people are like, oh, sorry, I didn't get that. And I'm always upset. It doesn't matter if I even wanted it or not.
Yeah.
But I'm always upset that I lose because I put in all this work. And usually I'm like, I'm not that sad about not getting the job, but I'm sad that I just spent a week, that I killed my whole weekend, that I didn't spend with my kids, that I am working on this pitch instead. But on this job specifically, losing it because it was such a fast turnaround, I did do the whole pitch over the weekend. It's not like I spent weeks on it. And I did feel like I have to it's with this really good agency, Leo Burnett. And I do feel like showing kind of that I can compete, that I'm bringing a lot of ideas, that I'm doing a lot of work for this will hopefully
pay off. Yeah.
Especially in their mind to be like, oh, okay, I guess we can put Oren in the mix with these types of directors.
People. Yeah, for sure. In class, and I think this is an acting adage, you book the room, not the role, right? Like show up, ready, awesome, bring your best. You don't have control over whether or not you're the right fit for the thing that they're casting, right? And I think that the same is true for directors in so much as like, don't phone it in, bring your A game. And you proved that you can hang with this tier of directors, right? And so I know like we differ on this a little bit. It's a lot easier when we're working a lot. But like when I see somebody whose work I admire and they win the job, it feels nice to be in that mix of like, oh, these people are awesome, right? And like sometimes the person is quite renowned and famous and you're like, well, I would pick them too. I can't compete. Like that's the negative side. But the positive side is like, oh, like people think of me in this same echelon. And that's cool. That's cool for sure. Again, if you needed the job really badly, or if you're not getting many at bats, or like you're in between reps, or like if you're hurting, it's a lot harder to have that attitude. But you're killing it. So I think Nikki Weiss, who's your sales rep.
Yeah. And that was Nikki Weiss.
Really talks about it. Yeah. She really talks about, being in the mix with these people means that, you're of that tier. So losing that job, but being up against directors that literally everyone who knows directors has heard of is a good sign, I guess is all I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And I do think that is a thing, I think as directors, we don't really think about, but it's really, we actually did talk about kind of being on lists. I think, I forget which director we had that said that, maybe Aaron Murray or someone recently. But, just getting your name to be next to these other people's names is like so valuable. And it's just like that triangulation of like, oh yeah, I've seen this name before. Let's look at what their work is. And hopefully the work, your work doesn't have to be like 100% A pluses, but if you have like a couple A's and then a few things that are really speak to the creative, to what they're looking for, then it can help. So yeah, right now I'm having a nice summer. I was thinking today about like kind of the next step in my career. I mean, I knew we were going to record the podcast and I was thinking about what we would talk about today and was again reminded of how we've kind of set goals for ourselves over the years. I mean, I went on long tirades, about how important proofs of concepts are that I never ended up making. And you'd always yell at me. And of course you had your feature that bet money on that you wouldn't make. And now I feel like I've ruined your whole life. But
that's the reason I didn't make the feature.
You didn't want me to win. You don't want me to lose that bet. But I do feel like my goal for next year is to, I mean, this is a lofty goal and it's not really something you have control of, but like my dream for next year is that I will be excited about every job I take. Because I'm almost at that place where sometimes there'll be a week and I get to choose between two jobs.
This is the shift. This is a shift in the show between like a water cooler talk. Other directors can commiserate. This is a one-on-one conversation that people are just going to listen to. You are already there. You just don't turn those jobs down. How many days have you worked this year?
I don't know. I have to look at my
15,
list.
20?
Probably something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. That I'm aiming to shoot like 20 days this year, right? So we're smack dab in the middle of the year and you're kind of on track to 2x a pretty good living. Do you know what I mean? Like you could afford to like, if you instead of like aiming to do 40 days, which is what you're on track for, if you did 25 or 30,
I guess it's less about
you could
the
turn
days.
down those jobs that you're not so excited for.
It's more about
it's a mentality shift for you specifically, Oren Kaplan.
But it's about the fear of saying no to someone that they will not come back to you, you know?
Yeah.
And like literally this morning, someone emailed me about a VFX job, a very low budget indie film.
I turned that down. Turn that down.
I'm like, I don't know. I think I could squeeze it in, on the side.
Oren, turn that down. Turn that down.
Okay. I did just do a VFX job 2 weeks ago,
And I'm saying you should have turned that one down too.
I probably should have. Yeah.
Yeah. I 100% I understand. I got hit up the very last minute for something where the budget was way too low, but the creative was cool. And it's a company that I would like to work with. But the budget was way too low. Like
for what they wanted or for what you wanted?
For what they wanted and what I wanted. But when they told me the budget, without joking, was seriously, it was like,
take.
I was like, for my rate?
Yeah.
Because that's a little low. And they were like, oh, we're having a different conversation.
Yeah.
And I ultimately had to turn it down more because I was like, I don't think that we could pull this off. Even if I just like took a wash, that just literally didn't get paid at all. I don't think we could pull this off. And I wouldn't want to show it to people. Do you know what I mean? I'm sad about it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
we just would have shot yesterday. I would have worked through the film festival. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
to get it all prepped. My computer was in the shop. I told you I broke my computer, right? Such a bummer.
I don't know.
I think it was after either a conversation or you or on this job. I closed the screen and there was a little dongle that cracked the screen. So it was basically, it was such a bummer. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like we're both insane.
But
right?
see, I would have probably taken that job and been like, hey, like, I really want to work with you and I want you to think of me. I mean, I have like I'm so weird about this. Like
this
literally anyone that
this is exactly what I said. Yeah.
Texts me, they're like, oh, hey, have you seen this job or whatever? And I'm like, no, let's submit. Well, actually, when is it? What is it? Like, just like my instinct is just to say yes to everything.
And that's right. That's right. Right. But I think that you're not gonna be able to put in the time on the stuff that you are getting that's great. Like, you don't need the table scraps anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I just need to convince myself that there's directors like, high, and like I've heard this about like Steve Miller at Radical Media, that like he takes the jobs he likes. He doesn't do non-SAG jobs,
Sure. Yeah.
He's like, I want to work with really good actors. So if you want me to do your thing, here's the minimum. I've heard of there's directors at art class are like, if it's not $1 million budget, I'm not even going to look at it. That's not art class, but they have a lot of directors that will work for very inexpensively.
And I don't mind getting scrappy. I like getting scrappy. There's stuff on my reel that the budget is very, very low and no one thought it was going to be good. And it turned out for sure.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying like you can afford to be a little bit more selective now for sure. And the more importantly, the other work I think will get a little bit better.
Yeah, for sure. More time for a project, especially on post, I think would be helpful. A friend of ours that you just worked with and I'm going to be working with sent me a text he's like, hey, we should get our kids together. And I was like, dude, I have like so many things going on. I don't see. And I was like, he's like, well, when do you have open? I was like, I have this tomorrow. I have this. Like,
so don't you want to squeeze, man? Yeah.
And he wrote back, he's like, been reading tons of business scaling books over the last few years and it changed my outlook. Whatever your hourly rate is, look at anything in your life and whatever is less than that, you should pay for, which was this very sloppy way of saying, stop doing things that aren't worth your time.
Look, there's a little bit of like hustle culture, grind culture to that advice that I take with a grain of salt. But, if your time is better spent, not cleaning your house or whatever, it is okay to offset some of that stuff. We're in a privileged position where like when you're hitting, directing pays very well,
Yeah.
And so you owe it to yourself to like capitalize on that for sure. But I think like there are diminishing returns if you're doing too many jobs,
Yeah.
As a pivot, because you were out of town and then I was out of town, we haven't talked in kind of a while. We like managed to bank a bunch of episodes and we're just catching up. So there is something else. I didn't end up getting the job, but do you remember I texted you about this? Either the way in which we find jobs always evolving.
Yes. Yeah. I think this topic, I told you about my whole conversation?
No, I don't think so. So this would be great.
Go on. Yeah.
So I got hit up out of the blue by a producer who was like, hey, we have these boards. We think you'd be great for them. Are you available? And like that happens with some regularity. And, I talked to them or whatever, and I'm freelance right now, so like it was an easy yes to be like, yeah, cool. This is a cool campaign. I have the right reel for it. I really like this. This could be rad. And I always am like, I'm curious. How did you find me? And it's almost always word of mouth, or like a couple times people have been like, oh, Vimeo. This time the producer was like, honestly, I put all of the info into ChatGPT and it said, Matt and Lo should direct this spot. And so they reached out.
Dude, it's so bonkers. And you don't know what the info was.
And I don't know what the info was. And I also like got on ChatGPT because I use ChatGPT sometimes. And I was like, are you telling people about me? Like, is what I say to you private, or is it feeding your database in some way? Right? Because I talk like, you need to rewrite a bio, or you need to scan a resume to make sure that it's scannable for ATF, whatever it is. There's all sorts of different reasons you tell these programs about yourself, right? Like that's one of the big concerns we have is like, oh, you're feeding this tech beast or whatever. Right. And it was like,
we're all uploading our NDA scripts to ChatGPT and asking them to make them better.
Exactly. So ChatGPT basically knows the internet from like mid 2024. So it has access to our websites and things like that, but not current up to date. It can't go query something like that, right?
Yeah.
And I think
that's a soft yes.
That's a soft yes. Yeah, exactly. So, but it's not using the conversations that I've had with it to feed in. Because then I was like, oh man, maybe I should tell it a lot more about myself. Tell about like how great I am on all these other aspects. Maybe I'll get more jobs this way. But it was bonkers. What do you think of that? Like,
what do you think I would think?
I mean,
what do you think my reaction to that, I guess, first of all?
I don't know. I think
what do you think the first thing Oren Kaplan would do when Matt Enlow tells him that he got a job, that he got found on ChatGPT?
I honestly, like, would you go try and upload your stuff to ChatGPT? You're like, let me capitalize?
There's probably nothing interesting about reading a ChatGPT transcript on the podcast, but I'm going to try to do a real quick version of it.
Okay.
ChatGPT, can you help me find some talented comedy commercial directors that also use visual effects in their work, ideally based in Los Angeles? And it's like, sure, here's some top-tier commercial directors based in LA, renowned for their comedic storytelling and integration of visual effects. Nick and Charles and Cal Maddock, Tom Kuntz, Alex Cooper, Johnny Han, Udesh Chetty. Here's some studios you can contact. And I was like, okay, these are great. Maybe find me some directors in a cheaper price range. Taylor Harrington, Seth Worley, Mike Diva, David Kodegli, Billy Ferguson, Ross Kay, Upwork VFX and animation talent. It's like, okay, what about non-VFX directors, but with a lot of comedy and celebrity?
That's funny too, because you know what? That just speaks to its lack of authority on the subject, right? We recognize lots of different names in that list, and Mike Diva directs for SNL right now. So he is, I'm going to guess, pretty expensive. I wouldn't say Mike Diva is in the second tier. I have no idea of his financials or his deal, but just knowing that he has been directing for SNL for the last few years, he's probably...
My guess is that both Mike Diva and Tim Wolkheim, our buddy that also directs for SNL, will do a job at the same rate that we do.
That is true. That is definitely true. But like you said to ChatGPT,
right? Find me some cheaper people than maybe Tom Kuntz, like probably one of the most premier comedy directors in existence right now.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to recommend me.
How will it get? What will it take for me to get my name out of this thing?
So the list keeps going. Tim K. Golden, Jim Zulian, J.J. Adler at Ruckus, Carlin Hudson, John Lair.
Oh, I'm loving this so much, actually.
And I'm like, okay, any Jewish ones? Directors with Jewish background and comedy and celebrity experience, based in L.A. Brian Gordon, Jonathan Kesselman, Todd Strauss-Jolson, David Mandel. I'm like, okay, give me a list of 20. Please, with their production companies. Jonathan Levine, Eitan Cohen, Todd Strauss-Jolson, Neil Israel, David Frankel, Howard Ziff, Dan Herzog, Effin Funny, Sammy Cohen, Carlin Hudson.
Sandeep's not Jewish.
Mike Diva, I know. So then, of course, I write back, okay, lots of these are definitely not Jewish, and I only want comedy commercial directors. Okay, David Steinberg, Frank Tamarillo, J.J. Adler, it's kind of starting to repeat people, Todd Strauss-Jolson, Adam Bernstein. And then I was like, okay, Carlin and Mike Diva are definitely not Jewish. What about Oren Kaplan? Why is he not on your list? Finally, it acknowledges my existence. Certainly, Oren Kaplan's a perfect addition, and here's why he stands out. It says nice things about me. And I was like, what would make Oren appear higher on your search results? And he goes, it goes. Sorry. It goes. Oren Kaplan didn't surface. It's funny because I was calling her a she, now I'm calling her. It goes. Lack of keyword-rich press coverage, limited list inclusion, portfolio ambiguity, would help if he was featured in articles like in Ad Age Shots or LBB Online that highlight his work.
Which
and
is funny. Yeah, because you have a bunch.
He's been featured in many publications like LBB, Ad Age, and Shots. Do you see that? Is he not here? Yeah. What is going on here?
I'll tell you exactly what to do with a lifetime supply of chocolate.
And then it pulled up there. You're like, you're right. He is in LBB and Shots and Adland. Anyway, so finally I admit the truth. And I'm like, hey, just so you know, I am Oren Kaplan, which you should know because you literally
we were just talking.
As some feature, you were telling me to ask me about myself, and you told me all these things about myself. Yeah. I am Oren Kaplan, and I want to be higher in AI chatbot searches. And he said, awesome to meet you, Oren Kaplan. Thanks for sharing that. And then it had all these ideas. Optimize your website and bios with clear keywords, promote content with those keywords, ask agency and publications to update metadata, try to appear on curated industry lists, which I don't know how you do that. Leverage social media, which I think I do. And then I said, so in the end, it had no good reason. But of course, it didn't recommend you either. I guess you're not Jewish.
I'm a Jewish VFX comedy director.
Yeah. But I was so mad at ChatGPT for just totally ignoring my existence.
So I haven't read your bio in a minute. I'm going to guess that part of the reason why I came up in those searches is because I say something to the effect of I cut my teeth at Comedy Central, Funny or Die, College Humor. I bet those three keywords.
You did.
Yeah.
I remember you were telling me how a bio is important, and I was kind of like dismissive of it.
Yeah. And I certainly wasn't writing it for a chatbot to scrub, right? It was more, I was trying to create a narrative for people to see that where I started and why that's beneficial, and then how I gained more and more experience in this specific world and all of that. But it is interesting to think of the way things are changing. Yeah, for sure.
When I was in Thailand, the EP there, who has all his company is based in Vietnam. He has all these Vietnamese employees, and he was proud that the woman that found me and some of the other directors they worked with, he's like, and I am proud to say that she did not use ChatGPT. She did all her own research. And I was like, oh, is that a thing that people do? He's like, oh yeah, so many people are just using ChatGPT to find people now.
Yeah.
Which I guess I'm guilty. I was using DeepSeek to look for locations, for hotels. So I guess that's it. And I think if we could chat bomb or whatever, the Google bomb equivalent of getting ourselves high on the search results, maybe that's a thing we should be doing.
Maybe don't overthink it too much. And look, I didn't shortlist.
Right. But again, it's like we just talked about, the more times your name comes up, the more absolutely. Chance you'll book at some point.
Yeah.
The up at bats, you would know you're now a baseball pro.
Baseball pro. That's right. Well,
Matt just shot some baseball.
I did shot some baseball stuff. Yeah. That's great. I don't know when it comes out. I'm ready to post about it.
Yeah, well, cool. You got a minute to endorse something?
I do indeed.
Unpaid endorsements.
My unpaid endorsement, it's kind of a broad one, but I've been thinking about it a lot lately. As I've been alluding to, I've been writing a lot more. It's been feeling really good. But, I think when people can get really precious about writing, right? And oh, I have to light a candle and I have to have the right pen and and, those rituals can become ways in which we limit ourselves, right? Because if you don't have your candle, can you not write then? And so I started being pretty anti all of that.
Anti-ritual?
Anti-ritual. Just I'm a writer. I can just do it whenever I'm going to get started. I like to start in the morning. For sure, I'm the best in the morning. But if I've only got from 3 to 4, I'm going to crank some pages out then, right? And I think that's maybe my pendulum swung too far a little bit. And so I'm back on a ritual that I find really helpful, actually, which is making playlists for the projects that I'm working on. So whenever I'm writing on a certain script, or if I hear a song that I think, oh, this actually kind of puts me in the headspace of where I need to be to write that thing, I just add it to the list, just all on Spotify, and I just have a couple going. And I never stopped doing it, but I think, especially because I'm kind of straddling 2 different projects right now, being able to lock in of these songs put me in the space, and every time I write this script, I'm listening to this music. It's just a little way to kickstart the habit again, just to get back into it relatively quickly. And that is the thing that I think people oftentimes struggle with the most, right? Like, how do you carry momentum from yesterday into today, right? And, there's all sorts of different adages. Like, people say, stop before you're finished, right? Stop mid-thought so that you can just pick it back up and then carry the ball forward. But playlists for the things you're writing, I think is my new favorite again.
That's cool. Yeah. And actually, it's funny. I didn't really have an endorsement on deck, but your endorsement kind of reminded me of this thing. Do you know who Adam Patch is?
No.
He is a director. He's really good. I think he's with Stept, the production company, STEPT. And he made this tool I saw on Instagram. It's called Patch Tagger, PATCHTAGGER. And I think it's free to kind of try out or to use.
I think I have maybe seen this. Keep going. Yeah.
It's basically, he makes a lot of treatments and references a lot of videos and does things. And he's like, I'm always in this situation where I know I saw something that would be good for this, but I just have no idea how to find it. He's like, there's all these video libraries, but it's just like, how do you even find something fast? And so it's just this tool. It's in Google Chrome. And anytime you see a video on YouTube, Vimeo, Instagram, anything you like, you can just tag it. Like, oh, this is a fun dog video. This is a fun camera move. This is a fun celebrity thing, comedic performance, cool art direction, anything. And then it just kind of keeps this database of all the videos you've ever tagged.
And it's just links, basically?
Yeah, it kind of builds like a UI. To be honest, I installed it, but I haven't used it yet. I kind of keep forgetting that it exists. But as you were describing, I was like, oh yeah, the keeping a list of references is good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because I feel like I use a lot of features in my treatments, and I think people are pretty divided about that. But you're making me realize that maybe part of the reason why I do that is because my ability to recall a scene is much easier because it's embedded in a film. And so like, there's just more to chew on, I'm on Letterboxd writing a review, or, you just spend more time soaking in a feature than you do a 30-second spot,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I even something I'll do is I'll just like a video on Instagram because I know I can go into my history and see all the things I liked.
Yeah, that's
even if I didn't necessarily like it, but I want to
recall it
at some point in the future. Yeah. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, so if you've got anything to recommend, we'd love to hear from you. You can email us at justshootitpod@gmail.com. If there's topics you want us to cover, we're happy to cover them. If there's guests you want us to try to get, we're happy to try to get them. We have a long list of potential guests. We've just been having a little trouble scheduling things recently, but we will get back into it very shortly. We appreciate you all. We're across all social media at Just Shoot It Pod. I'm on Instagram at Kaplan.
And I'm at Mr. Matt Emma. This episode was edited by Kevin Oyang. Thanks, Kevin. Our social media is by Lily Bouvier and produced by Tyler Small. And you're listening to music provided by the Free Music Archive and the artist, Jazar. Thanks everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye.